to Dateline Marion, and our guest is Marion head football coach Kerry Martin, and it's playoff time. Wildcats are in the playoffs, and for the first time since the first round in 2010, Marion's hosting a playoff game. You've got Jacksonville coming in here this Saturday, but first let's talk a little bit about last week's game, Normandy, and a game that turned out to be probably a little bit easier than you thought it would, but a great opportunity for you to get some kids in and get some experience and rest some kids heading into the postseason.
Yeah, it was a good night. You know, we anticipated a little tougher showing from Normandy. They had looked a little better on film, and they had some really good skilled kids that stood out, but one of those skilled kids got hurt very early in the game, and I think that took some wind out of their sails. We jumped out to a big lead, and when you're 2-6, I've been on that side of the situation. When you're 2-6, you're on the road 2 hours away. It was, I think, a tough thing for them once they fell behind to keep their kids motivated. But our kids played really well. We were real proud of the fact that our special teams probably had their best night. Our defense was really on, really read their keys and got after it in a gang tackle mentality, which was awesome. And offensively, we kind of clicked, and it was just a good combination of all three phases coming together, and I thought one of the most solid performances we had. And then you mentioned we played a lot of kids. We got the ball in the hands of a lot of different players and got a lot of kids on the field, and that's good for your program.
You know, the final was 62-12. I think the game may have kind of reflected Normandy's season to a certain extent. You're up 14-0. They score. You know, early in the season, they lost to a couple of ranked teams. One of them was a really close game. They were kind of close for a while. And then all of a sudden, a couple things happened. Kid got injured. They had that during the season, too, where they lost some players. Their numbers were very low when they came in here. And by the end of the season and by the end of the game, you know, it just seemed like they were ready to go home.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been in that situation before. It's an uncomfortable situation. You're trying to finish the season on a positive note, and you're playing a pretty good football team, and I felt for the coach. They've been through a lot in the off season, and I know they've had some layoffs in the paper just last week before the game, and impending laying off 100 teachers within their district, and it's a tough situation. And I know they had a lot on their mind besides just playing football, but you know, as I said, a talented bunch. We had a heck of a ball game a year ago, and we kind of expected the same thing again. But I think being here was a big factor, and I think our kids coming out early and taking the game right to them early was a big deal.
And this is a game where you can gauge your mental approach, and you knew there were things going on, and the kids knew they were having a struggling season. And for your team, they really did a good job of staying focused on task. Even though the game got out of hand early, your kids kept their focus, and that's a very important thing.
I think you're right, and I think one of the things we talked about last Thursday was our pregame practice. We had our best pregame maybe in 3 years, and everything clicked. The focus was there, the energy, the enthusiasm. We were in and out of practice within probably less than an hour, and I told them afterwards, I mean, I don't know how you're going to play them all night, but if you played them all night like you practiced tonight, we're going to be in good shape. And I felt like they did. I mean, they carried that focus, that energy right over to kickoff time on Friday at 7. So it was a good week of practice for us. It was a good pregame. It was a good ball game. I think our kids looked fresh. They looked ready to go. And again, we're making that segue into the playoffs. We need that same focus, if not more, this week.
Well, and it was an important win because the way they split things up, we were thinking, you know, 18 quads, 4-5 game, and by getting that win, and conversely, the IHSA keeping it a 16-team bracket, it puts you at a 6th seed and afforded you a home game in the first round, which is always an important thing too.
I agree. You know, and we've played really well at home over the years, and of course, you know, we've been on the playoff run before, made those 2 and 3 and 4 hour drives, and not that determines the outcome, but it doesn't make it any easier when you've got to pack up a bus and load and drive and get out and stretch out and get, you know, I mean, it can be a haul sometimes, and I think there are a few advantages to playing on the road. I think you get your kids earlier in the day and you can focus them with some film on the way up, but there's nothing like a home atmosphere with our crowd, and we feel like our crowd is a big motivator for our players. We're comfortable here. We play well on the surface, and when you're going to play a good team like Jacksonville, I think any advantage you can get is going to be needed.
The Jacksonville Crimson are the opponent this Saturday, 2 o'clock game time on Saturday. Coach, they come from a conference that's well chronicled across the state, and a conference where you've played teams. You had the classic game here in 2010 against Springfield High School, right. 47-45. You went up to Chatham last year and played Chatham-Glenwood. Those aren't the teams that get the most recognition, but those are strong teams when you talk about Sacred Heart Griffin and Rochester that have each won. Rochester's a two-time defending Class 4A champion. Sacred Heart Griffin's been state champions in 5A and 6A. So that conference has a lot of quality football in it.
Boy, does it ever. Chatham-Glenwood played in the championship the year we played Springfield, 2010. Chatham played in the championship game. And yeah, up and down, you take a look at those top four teams. Those top four teams in that conference are good. Really good, and they compete at a very high level, and as you said, they have a reputation all over the state of Illinois for producing great football, and I think they're kind of the trendsetters in X's and O's around the league, and I know we spend some time up at Sacred Heart every year at a clinic and have for the last 5 years, and I think this is where we want to be. To be honest with you, I mean, if we're going to compete for a state championship, which has long been our goal here, and continues to be our goal, we've got to compete with these football teams from that conference, the upper layer of those teams, the upper tier. And so this is a great measuring stick. We did a lot in the off season to try to take our game to another level. And even though we had a lot of new faces, and I feel like this is a great opportunity to see where we're at and to play a good team like Jacksonville that competes in that conference week after week.
Jacksonville is a team that only plays in that conference during the regular season, but it seems like when they get to the postseason, they play at a different level. And we talked about that because 2 or 3 years ago in 2010, when the year Marion played Springfield, Jacksonville opened the playoffs with Sacred Heart Griffin and beat Sacred Heart Griffin.
Sure did.
And then lost by Chatham-Glenwood to a touchdown in the second round, and Chatham-Glenwood went to the state championship game. Last year, Jacksonville got Sacred Heart Griffin in the second round after beating a very good Centralia team handily in the first round, and lost by a point, and Sacred Heart Griffin went on to the semifinals. So when Jacksonville gets into the playoffs, it seems like they may have a good season. They go up a notch when they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. Their history shows that. It's evidence of that. And I know Coach Grounds very well, and we spent some time in the off season working together, and we've been to camp together on 2 or 3 different occasions. And we run the same offensive system. We are familiar with each other personally. He had nephews, Tori and Brock Stotler, that played here at Marion for me, and so he's an excellent football coach and does a great job. And I know the year you talked about them beating Sacred Heart in the first round, they were 5-4 going into that ball game, and they were a 5-4 team playing, I believe, a 9-0 team, and pulled off the upset. And Mark has that reputation, and so when you play good competition like Jacksonville, you play against a good coach like Mark Grounds, it'll make you a better program. And as I said, that's why we consider this a great measuring stick for us to see where we're at, and hopefully we can go out and compete and come home and or come back with a win or hit the road to normal U high or whatever. But we're looking forward to it. I know that we've long knew, Mark and I both, that sooner or later we were going to play each other, both 5A schools, and didn't expect it. Hoped it wouldn't be in the first round, but it is.
One of the things that this game provides. I lost my track. Oh, there we go. I got back on the tracks. As we're recording this on Tuesday, I talked to Coach Grounds earlier today, and I asked him, I said, compare your team, or compare Marion's team to another team in your conference. And he said, the styles of the conference are different, the two conferences are different, but when you try and look offense and defense, the team that I can compare them the most to is Jacksonville. And you talked about that Saturday night in that you're very similar teams, offensively and defensively both. He said that he thinks that makes it more difficult to prepare for a team because you watch their tendencies and things like that, but you always know in the back of your mind that there are other things in that offense that maybe they haven't run that you're capable of running, so you have to prepare for more things.
Well, and we run the same offensive system, but we have variations within that system that we run that are based on the skill set of the kids that we have. And so I know that, his team is a little bit different than ours in that he has a lot more size than we do. He's got a 6'7", 270-pound tight end. We don't have that. But we're trying to base a lot of what we do on some speed and some quickness and some other things. And he's able to do some things based on his personnel that's a little bit different. So we know they're within the same system. We know that they run a lot of things similar to us, some past patterns, and some concepts, but at the same time, there's a difference in what he does to win in that conference compared to what we do to win in ours. And I know that he'll have some wrinkles we haven't seen, and we've got some for him, so it ought to make for a good ball game.
Looking at the numbers, Jacksonville's more of a passing team than a running team. They are capable as a running team. They've got a couple of backs, 450, 350. You know, they do spread it out a little bit. They put the ball in a lot of people's hands.
Yes.
They've got one big receiver, one that they go to a lot.
Yes.
Cody Woods, who's got 900 yards receiving. But when you look at the number of catches, they got a couple of other kids who have just as many catches, just not for as many yards. So they put the ball in a lot of people's hands.
They do, and that makes them harder to defend. But the fact you can't sit on one thing, they're a multi-dimensional team. You're right, they're capable of running the ball. That's not what they do the most, but they're capable of running the football. And he puts the ball in the hands of a lot of people. He's got some great skilled kids. His quarterback is a very good player. So his offensive line does a great job protecting the quarterback and giving him time. So it'll be a great matchup. I know that our defense has got their work cut out for them because Mark is a great offensive mind as well. And Mark is really good about blocking schemes. And if you stop this, he'll tweak it by making an adjustment and doing that. And so it's a kind of ball game. It ought to be a good chess match, I think, between the two of us, our staffs trying to find ways to get points on the board.
Do you envision this being a game possibly similar to the Springfield game a few years ago, where there's a lot of points put on the board, and the team with the last possession is the team that could win?
A lot of people have asked that, and sometimes I think you expect that, and that's exactly what you get. And then I've also been in that situation where it ends up like us in Triad a few years ago,
right,
like a 19-10 ball game. So, I would anticipate some points being scored in this ball game.
Your team has scored, in your 7 wins, scored almost 45 points a game, 44.5 points a game in your 7 wins. It's clear that the offense needs to be clicking for you to be successful. In the 2 losses, you've scored 13 and 20. So you've obviously got some things you think you can do to make that offense successful.
Well, you're not going to deviate too much from what's brought you to this point. I mean, it comes down to finding out what their strengths are on defense, how can we exploit their weaknesses, what do we do well, and finding a way to keep doing what you do well. I've seen too many coaches, and myself been guilty of it before, where you have done something all year to get to this point and then think you've got to change a bunch of stuff to win a playoff game. And then you look back at the film and think, if it had just stuck to what we've been doing all year. Our kids are comfortable doing certain things, and they're good at them, and they're confident in them. So we got to make sure we do those things. But find a tweak, change a route, add a concept, maybe change a blocking scheme a little bit. Try to use a formation to put them in a situation that you can do something else. I mean, it's the subtle changes that will make the big difference in this ballgame.
Coach Ground said that if he compared the 2 teams and what one might have an advantage over, it'd be and you talked about Jacksonville's size.
Yes.
He talked about Marion's quickness, that you have a quickness advantage on them. So do you see it the same way?
I do. And it's not saying they're not quick.
Right.
I think we're a little quicker. Certainly they've got a size advantage, but keep in mind that everybody we've played this year had a size advantage over us. I don't know of a team that we were bigger than. So we're kind of used to being in that situation. And outside of the 2009, 2010 seasons, we've generally been smaller than a lot of our opponents. Those 2 years we were fairly big. But the situation now is trying to use our quickness to our advantage. And, again, that's part of the game plan. But certainly dealing with their size will be a challenge for us as well.
Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, a home crowd, and even the daytime games have a great atmosphere here at Marion.
They do. It's a great atmosphere. Those day games, you just know it's playoff time. It's an exciting day. It's exciting to be a part of the teams that are included in this process. And we love being a part of it. We're proud. We feel blessed. And we want to keep it going.
All right. We'll see you Saturday afternoon, Coach. Marion head football coach Kerry Martin for Dateline Marion. I'm Tim Petrowich.